Maynard. As you'll see on the screen here, there's a booklet, Talent Engagement. We're going to cover some of the material that's in here, and at the end, if you're interested in receiving a free copy, then just email us and we'll send you one.
So the purpose of the webinar is for us to explore what it is that leaders can do to increase levels of engagement. You can ask any questions as we go along, or you could ask questions, save the questions up for the end of the webinar.
Let's start by thinking about actually the reality right now in the UK, because Gallup did some research recently about the percentage of people who felt engaged in their work. Now, here's a thing for you to vote on or poll. Do you think it was A, 19%, B, 26%, or C, 43%? Now, it's interesting, those figures, they appear very low. Certainly many of our clients we work with who have done engagement surveys have come up with way over 50%. But nevertheless, Gallup did the research, and I'm trying to see whether people have
We're just getting information that actually the poll isn't working yet, but I have no doubt that all of you out there in webinar land have correctly chosen
19%.
Fantastic.
Which is appallingly low, of course. So what we're going to have a look at in this webinar is how do you get beyond that? Not just above the 50%, but really full engagement.
We need to start perhaps by answering the question, how actually are we defining talent? Michael, do you want to take that?
Yeah, the dictionary definition is this: special skill, faculty, aptitude. But of course the talents comes from an ancient definition, which I rather like, because it is about treasure and riches and all that sort of. Mind you, if you ask a kind of Hollywood producer, he'd probably say, it's the talent, stupid, you know. And there is this debate going on in organizations about whether you take an inclusive or exclusive view of talent. An exclusive one would be that you define a kind of a chosen small group of your biggest stars and call them your talent. There's a lot of progressive organizations out there who are really defining talent as everybody in the organization, because the talent resides in all of them. The issue is, how do you actually unlock it?
Well, there was a recent report that came out from the government called Engaging for Success, and it was by MacLeod and Clark, and it was a fascinating report. And what it did is it produced all the evidence and research and metrics that proved what we already intuitively know, which is that if you engage your talent, you positively affect the bottom line. It was a significant piece of work, and in fact so significant they're starting a new task force this year, which we are very privileged to be part of, looking at the nuts and bolts of how do you engage people.
But the actual data shows the following. In every area, engaged employees perform better, don't they?
There couldn't be an organization that wouldn't want some or all of these in their organization. But if that's what can happen within an organization, how do we know what an engaged employee looks like?
Yeah, well, a client of ours recently defined it in the following way, which I think is rather good. If you take a person who is fully engaged and they like to be excited, enthusiastic, they kind of are very focused and invest that discretionary effort. Take work home with them, certainly, because they're engaged in it. You know, it's enjoyable and it's emotionally contagious, and what's more, people feel proud to be part of something.
So can we just do a bit of personal research out there in webinar land? Can you think of a time when you were engaged in an activity, wholeheartedly engaged? It could be a project at work, could be a game of football.
It's interesting. It's often easier, isn't it, to think about when you weren't engaged, when you're completely disengaged in something, because we carry the scars of that. But actually, we'll all have experiences when we've been fully engaged in something.
And feel free to use the chat box if you want to share some examples of where you have been engaged. But we're really interested in what are the qualities of that engagement and what allowed you to be engaged.
It's this inquiry that actually led us to formulate a kind of model for engagement, for talent engagement. And you can see at the top it's VIDI. We'll come on to what they stand for in a moment. But VIDI is from the Latin, videre, which is to see. And it all starts with insight, actually, seeing what's needed. If you're a manager, you've got to see what's needed in order to engage people. The V stands for valued. You need to value people if they want to feel engaged. That everybody as an individual is valued, that their contribution makes a difference, that what's going on is in relationship to others and is fair. The I is for involvement. Again, turning up makes a difference. You're involved in what's going on. The D is, again, part of our basic human need to grow and evolve and learn and develop. And finally, I is for being inspired, that you feel you're part of something that has meaning and has purpose. What we're going to do now is have a look at each of these 4 elements and work our way through.
So if we start with valued, the notion of an individual being valued, what's important, of course, is that each individual is different and therefore requires being valued in a different way, or feeling being valued. These pillars of engagement are all linked to basic human needs. And this starts with the idea that we need to be valued economically and indeed emotionally.
Now, of course, these values change over time. As you go through life, our needs are different, and wise managers are able to have conversations that identify what people's needs are and adjust the rewards accordingly. This is beautifully summed up, the stages of life, I'm afraid, by this rather scary photograph.
That's excellent. Whereabouts are you on that line then?
Sadly between the beer and the drip, but I think I'm a very mature wine in the middle there, the bottle that's not being shown.
Very good.
And of course, as manager, you need to look at, obviously people want money, they want to feel appropriately rewarded, but what else can you do to show that you value people beyond just financial remuneration? And that's obviously, it's the thank you. Yes, clearly, the well done.
Certainly. Yeah. Within our organisation, there are various examples. Well, one person in the office, for instance, likes to go and do 2 hours in the gym every day. So we're able to offer the flexible working that allows them to fulfil that particular need, and I hope that they feel valued by being seen specifically for that. We also, people can be valued just by asking to join a particular project. Yeah. They feel valued for their contribution, for their input. We once did a little exercise we called The Apprentice, in which we gave the office team a large amount of money each. We got them a taxi to go to Selfridges, and they had 20 minutes to spend the money, get what they wanted, and get back. It was a creative way of making people feel valued.
We used to have a box, didn't we, with gifts in it, all wrapped up. And it was called the Above and Beyond box. And if anybody witnessed anybody else doing something that was above and beyond the call of duty, they could kind of call order and then say, I'd like to award somebody this gift. And they'd pick out a gift from the box. There's loads of ways you can do it. It's about being creative with it.
Yes.
And one of the creative stimulus to this is that we've created these tips cards that we have on each of the 4 areas. So if you take being valued from it, what I'm doing at the moment, I'm holding the whole the 12 cards that are in the tips section. I'm going to shuffle them, and I'm going to ask Stuart to choose one and read out what's on the card.
Right, I'm just going to pick one of these at random. So this is about well-being.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll just read this to you. Talent engagement is entirely compatible with a healthy work style. Yeah, this is very important. Just ensure people's commitment does not come at the expense of health, family, and living life to the full. Make sure their work-life balance is balanced. And there's a little suggestion on here, which is check today if your team are taking all of their holidays and regular break entitlements. Have a conversation about what's happening in their life outside of work.
Right. We're now going to move on to the next element, which is being involved. But is there a question? Pick up there?
We're picking up a few questions, but we'll answer those at the end.
Okay, great. So involvement, I mean, that's all really about communication. Again, the impact that people make, the fact that if they turn up to work, it actually makes a difference. They know they're making a contribution. And also the element of play.
So really the basis of involvement is working with people's attitudes and their ability to take responsibility for things?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's crucial. I think the element of taking responsibility is absolutely crucial. And we've played around over the years with a model or a framework for thinking that looks at the relationship between the amount of responsibility people take and how effective they are. So, for instance, if people are very proactive, then they tend to be highly effective. But if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you know, those who are reactive, life happens to them, they tend not to be very effective. And you could call them, actually, the victims of life, you know. And what happens often is because responsibility is the ability to respond. These sort of people don't feel they have any ability to respond to things in a creative way. So, you know, they just sit there and feel sorry for themselves, really. They're the poor me's, you know. There's another sort of victim who are a bit more energetic, and they're the ones who are, we call the blamers, you know, who point their finger all the time. And I don't know about your experience, but these two often meet by the water cooler, don't they, or the photocopier, and the poor me's saying, oh, it's awful, isn't it? And the blamers saying, well, it's not your fault, it's them, isn't it? It's them. What they don't realize, of course, there is a completely different approach to all this, which is knowing you have choice. And knowing you have choice means that you know, when opportunities come along, you simply take them. You're a player, you get involved. What's more, you can even seek opportunities. And finally, I suppose the really creative people, Charles Handy called the alchemists, people who can turn, you know, base metal into gold, or the entrepreneurs, people who in any situation can create value for themselves. And if you want to involve people, you're going to have to not victimize them, not treat them as victims, but actually give them opportunities that they can take and take responsibility for.
And also support them in moving out of any victim position they might have trapped themselves in.
Yeah.
The victims are giving their power away. So what are some of the strategies for moving people from victim to chooser? I always find that the first place to start from is you have to start from awareness. I often use this model to help people see where they might be on the spectrum. Having identified where they are, then you're able to give them a certain level of vision about where they might move to, or what it might look like if they were to move further up the ladder, taking on more responsibility, involving themselves more, and having a more positive attitude. You have to, as a leader, I think, provide both support and challenge in order to move them up that ladder.
But the essential thing is you do have to move them out of a victim position.
Yes.
There's just no way that they can stay. It's real dead wood, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that comes down to your ability to communicate.
Yeah. And very often people feel victims because they're talked at. You know, that many leaders don't communicate, they broadcast. And it is a monologue. Now, they then wise up and think, oh, no, we've got to get some input. It's two-way. We want to hear your ideas, let's say, put in suggestion boxes, or, you know, email me and let me know what you feel. But real involvement goes way beyond that. It's about proper dialogue. It's everybody having a conversation, isn't it?
And so that takes us into the areas of meetings, and of course meetings is a horrific word in most organisations. It was, I think, John Humphrey's advice at the BBC was if you're going to a meeting at the BBC, stand near the door and leave as quickly as possible. They're seen as places where people take minutes and waste hours, and that is such a shame, because I think meetings are really great opportunities for people to come together, to share knowledge, share practice, to collaborate creatively, partnership, to be productive. And it takes a very fine leader to be able to create that environment of productive collaboration within meetings.
Yeah,